Amelia Carter stood at the entrance of the Galactic Confederation Academy, her small frame dwarfed by the massive doors designed for beings twice her size. The silver and blue building stretched high into the orange sky of Nexus Station, the diplomatic hub where 27 alien species had established the Interstellar Alliance 200 years before humans were even discovered. She took a deep breath, feeling the slightly higher oxygen content fill her lungs. It made her lightheaded in a pleasant way, though the medical staff had warned her about possible euphoric effects until her body adjusted. The lower gravity, about 70% of Earth standard, made her feel springy and light on her feet. A tall, thin alien with pale blue skin and 4 arms approached her. Human female Amelia Carter? The translator device on its chest converted its high-pitched clicks into English. Yes, that's me, she replied, standing straighter. I am Administrative Officer Trilgzar. Your presence here is unusual. The alien's large eyes blinked vertically as it consulted a floating holographic display. You are the only human in this year's class and one of only 12 humans ever admitted to the Academy. Your planet is classified as a Class 12 death world. Most beings find this difficult to comprehend. Amelia nodded. She had heard this many times since Earth joined the Confederation 3 years ago. Humans came from a planet that, by galactic standards, should have killed them long ago. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, dangerous radiation levels from their sun, aggressive microorganisms, and predatory megafauna had all shaped human evolution in ways that made other species uncomfortable. Your quarters are in Section 8, designed for oxygen breathers of approximately your mass. You will find the accommodations tolerable, we hope. Trilgzar handed her a small device. This will guide you and translate. The orientation begins in 2 hours. Do not be late. With that, the alien turned and walked away, not waiting for a response. Amelia followed the map on her device, walking through corridors filled with beings of all shapes and sizes. Some resembled insects, others looked like walking plants, and a few appeared to be made of living crystal. They all gave her curious or dismissive looks as she passed. Her room was small but functional, with a bed too long for her body, atmospheric, controls set for someone who needed more humidity, and a strange bathroom facility she would need time to figure out. The gravity was even lighter here than in the main halls. As an experiment, Amelia jumped slightly and nearly hit her head on the ceiling 7 feet above. She smiled. They had no idea what this meant for her combat capabilities. 2 hours later, Amelia sat in a large auditorium with 30 other students from across the galaxy. She was by far the smallest being there. To her left sat a massive creature with red scales and 4 eyes. To her right was an empty seat because the gelatinous being in the next chair needed extra space for its constantly shifting form. Commander Zorthax, a 7-foot-tall Draxian with chitinous armor covering his body and 4 upper limbs, stood at the front of the room. His exoskeleton gleamed under the lights, showing battle scars that had been polished to a shine rather than repaired, a sign of pride in his species. Welcome to the Galactic Confederation Academy's Elite Combat Training Program. His deep voice boomed through the hall. You represent the finest warriors of your respective worlds. Over the next 6 months, you will learn advanced combat techniques from across the Confederation. Only those who excel will continue to the specialized training that follows. His 4 eyes scanned the room, settling briefly on each student. When they reached Amelia, they moved on so quickly she wasn't sure if he had seen her at all. Combat. In the modern galaxy requires strength, speed, tactical thinking, and proper use of your natural biological advantages. Zorthax continued. Each species brings something unique to the battlefield. The Viridians with their multiple limbs excel at weapons handling. The Draxians, like myself, possess natural armor and strength. The Axolotl have unmatched sensory perception. He never mentioned humans. After orientation, the students were divided into training groups. Amelia found herself assigned to the Special Considerations Group, a diplomatic way of saying physically inadequate. Her training officer, a Teresian named Velnaran with 6 eyes and limbs specialized for combat, barely looked at her as he explained the modified program. "You will follow an adjusted training regimen suitable for your limitations," he said. "Humans lack the necessary physiological advantages for frontline combat. Your single heart, limited visual spectrum, and fragile external covering make you better suited for support roles." Amelia kept her face neutral. "I would prefer to follow the standard program, sir." Velnaran made a sound that her translator didn't catch, but his body language suggested amusement. "That would be unwise and potentially dangerous for you. We understand that humans have a certain overconfidence, but the standard program would likely result in serious injury for someone of your species." "I understand, sir," Amelia said, deciding not to argue further. Not yet. That night, alone in her quarters, Amelia accessed the Academy's public database and reviewed information about her instructors and fellow students. Commander Zorthax had led battles against the Hive Collective on the edge of known space. Instructor Velnaran was renowned for his expertise in multi-limbed combat techniques. The student body included children of war heroes, diplomatic security forces, and even a royal guard from the Centauri kingdoms. And then there was her. 22 years old, Special Forces operative from Earth, the first human female accepted into the Academy's elite combat program. On paper, she looked like a curiosity at best, a mistake at worst. Amelia closed the files and stood up. The room's gravity was set at 0.7 of Earth standard, a fact none of her instructors had accounted for in their assessment of her capabilities. She began a series of exercises designed for the higher gravity of her home planet, moving through them with practiced precision. Let them underestimate her. On Earth, Amelia had specialized in taking down targets 3 times her size. The higher oxygen content here meant her endurance was actually 30% better than on Earth. And the lighter gravity? It made her faster than she'd ever been. As she trained in silence, Amelia thought about the months ahead. She would play along with their special considerations. She would accept their dismissal and low expectations. She would learn everything she could about each species' weaknesses and strengths, and when the moment was right, she would show them exactly what a human from a death world could do. Outside her window, the strange stars of a galaxy that still thought of her kind as fragile curiosities continued their ancient dance, unaware that everything was about to change. 3 weeks passed at the Galactic Confederation Academy. Amelia spent her days following the modified training program designed for physically limited species. While other students practiced with plasma weapons and gravity manipulators, she was given basic defensive tools and simple projectile weapons considered outdated by Confederation standards. Humans lack the necessary reaction speed for advanced weapon systems, Instructor Velnaran explained to her one day when she asked to try a standard-issue neural disruptor. "Your nervous system is too primitive to handle the feedback loop." Amelia nodded and accepted the lower-grade weapon without argument. She had decided early on to pick her battles carefully. For now, she would watch and learn. In the physical training hall, the situation was no better. Amelia was paired with Glorp, a gelatinous Moldovan who was considered the weakest student in the class. Despite this label, Glorp could stretch his body to 3 times its normal size and had strength that exceeded Amelia's by a significant margin. "Try not to damage the human," Instructor Velnaran told Glorp before their first sparring match. "Their skeletal structure is very fragile." Glorp's translucent body rippled in what might have been a nod. "I will be careful with the small creature." The match began, and Amelia immediately understood why Glorp was considered weak by Confederation standards. While strong, he moved slowly and telegraphed his attacks several seconds before making them. For a human trained to react to threats in fractions of a second, it was like fighting in slow motion. Amelia avoided his strikes easily, ducking and weaving around his extended limbs. She could have countered, could have demonstrated what she was truly capable of, but she held back. Not yet. She needed to learn more first. Each night, Amelia trained alone in her quarters. She had gradually adjusted the gravity controls to match Earth's standard, then pushed it even higher. She practiced movements designed to take advantage of the Academy's actual lower gravity setting. In the lighter environment of the combat training halls, she would be able to move faster jump higher, and strike harder than anyone expected. During tactical simulations, Amelia's suggestions were routinely overruled or ignored. When the class was divided into squads for mock combat scenarios, she was always assigned to support roles far from the main action. The human will monitor communications, Squad Leader Drav, a four-armed Viridian, announced during one exercise. Stay in the command post where it's safe. Amelia nodded without protest. From the command post, she was able to observe the tactics and fighting styles of all the other species. She noted their blind spots, their habits, their weaknesses. The Viridians relied heavily on their extra limbs, but had poor awareness of what was below them. The Draxians were strong, but turned slowly. The crystalline Lithians were nearly impossible to hurt with blunt force, but shattered when struck at specific angles. She filed away each observation, building a mental database of knowledge that no one realized she was collecting. One day, during a rare meal break she shared with another human, Amelia met Kyle Bennett. He was the only other human at the academy, though he was in the diplomatic security program rather than combat training. "How are they treating you over in combat?" Kyle asked, his voice low as they sat at an empty table. The cafeteria was designed for beings of all types, with specialized feeding stations for each biological group. The human section was the smallest. "About how you'd expect," Amelia replied, watching a group of Draxian students at another table mock her small size with exaggerated gestures. "They think I'm made of glass." Kyle nodded. "Been here 2 years, and they still act surprised when I lift something heavy or run for more than a minute without getting tired. They'll never see us as equals, Amelia." She took a bite of her synthesized food, designed to mimic Earth nutrients but lacking any real flavor. "That's fine. Let them think what they want. You've got something planned, don't you?" Kyle studied her face carefully. Amelia just smiled. "Maybe." In the combat theory class the next day, Instructor Velnarin was explaining specialized fighting techniques for various environments. In low-gravity situations, species with natural jumping abilities like the Hyperions have a clear advantage, he said, displaying holographic representations of various aliens in combat. In high radiation zones, those with natural shielding, like the Drox, can operate without additional protection. A Lithian student raised a crystalline limb. "What about Deathworlds? How do combat tactics differ there?" Velnarin's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of discomfort among Teresians. "Deathworlds are extreme environments not suitable for most civilized species. The Confederation rarely conducts operations on such planets." "But what about the humans?" The Lithian persisted, its faceted body reflecting light as it turned toward Amelia. "They evolved on a death world, yes? What special adaptations do they have?" All eyes in the room turned to Amelia. She could feel their curiosity, their doubt, their dismissal. Velnarin made a dismissive gesture with his third right limb. "Humans survive their harsh world through tool use and group cooperation, not through superior physical abilities. Their planet's high gravity gives them some density advantage, but nothing significant in modern combat scenarios where technology and specialized biology dominate." Amelia said nothing, but she made note of the instructor's fundamental misunderstanding. Humans hadn't just survived Earth's conditions. They had thrived because of them. The constant threats, the changing environments, the need to adapt quickly. These had created a species that could think around problems, that could turn disadvantages into advantages, that could assess threats and find weaknesses faster than any other known sentient species. Later that week, the class moved to practical weapons training. Students were paired up to practice disarming techniques. Amelia found herself facing Zontar, an aggressive axolotl student who had made his disdain for humans clear from the first day. "Do not worry, small human," Zontar clicked through his translator. "I will try not to break your fragile bones." Amelia nodded, keeping her face neutral as she took her position. Zontar held a standard-issue shock baton designed to incapacitate without killing. She held a training dagger made of soft polymer that could register hits, but not cause damage. "Begin," called Velnarin. Zontar lunged forward, confident in his superior reach and strength. Amelia could have ended it in seconds. She could have used the axolotl's momentum against him, could have targeted the sensitive joint under his second arm segment, could have demonstrated what a human from a class 12 Deathworld was truly capable of. Instead, she defended adequately but not impressively, allowing Zontar to eventually disarm her as expected. Acceptable defense for your capabilities, Velnaran noted in his evaluation, but insufficient for combat application. Amelia bowed her head in apparent acceptance of the assessment. Soon, she thought. Soon they would understand. But not yet. She needed the perfect moment, the perfect opponent, and the perfect audience. And then, at the beginning of the 4th week, the opportunity arrived. Admiral Krevnar, the legendary Tarisian war hero and head of the Galactic Confederation fleet, announced his inspection visit to the Academy. News of Admiral Krevnar's visit spread through the Academy like wildfire. Students polished their equipment and practiced their best combat moves. Instructors reviewed their lesson plans and prepared impressive demonstrations. Everyone wanted to catch the eye of the most decorated warrior in the Confederation. Amelia watched the preparations with quiet interest. The Admiral's visit might provide the opportunity she had been waiting for. On the morning of the inspection, the combat training class assembled in the main hall. The room was designed to showcase various fighting styles, with adaptive terrain and gravity controls. Today it was set to standard configuration, flat floor, neutral lighting and gravity at 0.7 Earth normal, perfect conditions for what Amelia had in mind. Admiral Krevnar entered the hall with Commander Zorthax and several other high-ranking officers. The Admiral stood nearly 9 feet tall, his Tarisian body covered in armored scales that had withstood countless battles. Unlike Instructor Velnaran, who had 6 limbs, the Admiral had 8. The extra pair marked him as a rare genetic variant among his species. His translator was built into an ornate collar that signified his rank. Students of the Galactic Confederation Academy, his translated voice boomed across the hall. I am here to observe your progress and evaluate the quality of training at this facility. The Admiral's compound eyes scanned the assembled students who stood at rigid attention in rows organized by species group. Amelia, being the only human, stood alone in her row at the very end. Combat excellence is the backbone of Confederation security, the Admiral continued. Each of you represents the future of our United Defense Forces. Today, I will select 3 students for personal combat assessment. The room went completely silent. Being chosen for demonstration by Admiral Krevnar was both an honor and a terrifying prospect. The Admiral had 50 years of undefeated combat experience. Even in a training exercise, his techniques were legendary for their effectiveness and precision. When I call your name, step forward, the Admiral instructed. He consulted a datapad held by one of his aides. Zontar of Axolotl Prime. The insectoid student stepped forward, mandibles clicking with pride. As one of the top students in the class, his selection was expected. Thrax of the Viridian Collective. The 4-armed Viridian moved to stand beside Zontar. His metallic skin reflected the lights of the training hall. The Admiral's compound eyes scanned the remaining students. They passed over Amelia, then returned and lingered for a moment. She met his gaze steadily, something few non-Tarisians could do comfortably. The Admiral's pupils contracted slightly, a sign of interest in his species. And there was a slight pause. The human, to demonstrate various combat approaches. Whispers erupted across the training hall. Some students laughed openly. Commander Zorthax stepped forward and spoke quietly to the Admiral, clearly suggesting a replacement. Amelia could read his body language even without hearing the words. The commander was concerned that having a human in the demonstration would be embarrassing. The Admiral waved him off. Amelia understood his curiosity. To him, she was a creature from a world that, by all scientific measures, should not have produced sentient life. Deathworlders were rare in the Confederation, and humans were new enough to be scientific curiosities. This was it. The moment Amelia had been waiting for. She stepped forward, but instead of joining the other 2 selected students, she stopped in front of the Admiral. Admiral, she said clearly, I request to face Combat Instructor Velnaran instead. The room fell completely silent. Challenging. An instructor was unprecedented, especially for a student classified as physically inferior. Velnaran's neck crests flared in surprise and then amusement. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. You wish to face an instructor rather than participate in the standard demonstration? Yes, Admiral, Amelia replied. To better represent the capabilities of my species. Commander Zorthax moved forward again. Admiral, this is highly irregular. The human student has shown no exceptional ability that would warrant such a demonstration. Perhaps another student would be more suitable for your evaluation. The Admiral raised a limb, silencing the commander. He studied Amelia for a long moment. Instructor Velnaran, what is your assessment of this student? Velnaran stepped forward. The human has performed adequately within the modified program designed for her physical limitations. However, she lacks the necessary biological advantages for advanced combat applications. Her request is ambitious. Yet she makes it nonetheless, the Admiral noted. What say you, Instructor? Will you accept this challenge? Velnaran's neck crests fluttered, a sign of confidence among Teresians. I accept, he said before the Admiral could reconsider. Perhaps this will finally demonstrate why Deathworlders are ill-suited for combat roles. The Admiral nodded. The demonstration will proceed with this modification. Clear the training circle. Students hurried to the edges of the hall, their attention fixed on the center where Amelia and Velnaran would face off. The instructor stood a full 4 feet taller than her, his specialized combat limbs flexing with anticipation. He wore minimal protection, considering this merely a teaching opportunity rather than a true combat scenario. From the back of the hall, Amelia spotted Kyle Bennett slipping in. He had clearly heard about the unusual challenge and come to witness it. Their eyes met briefly, and he gave her a small nod. Standard rules, announced Admiral Krevnar. First immobilization or surrender constitutes victory. Begin when ready. Velnaran moved to the center of the circle and adopted the traditional Teresian combat stance, a posture optimized for his species' natural advantages, with secondary limbs raised defensively and primary limbs positioned to strike. Amelia walked calmly to her position. She stood casually, hands at her sides, weight balanced on her back foot. She took a deep breath, feeling the oxygen-rich air fill her lungs. She felt the lighter gravity supporting her muscles. She noted the excited murmurs from the students watching from the sidelines. For 3 weeks she had observed. She had studied. She had learned the weaknesses of every species in the academy, especially the instructors. She had trained in secret, preparing for this very moment. You may take the first move, human, Velnaran offered condescendingly. It's only fair given your disadvantages. Some students laughed. Commander Zorthax looked embarrassed that this demonstration was happening at all. Admiral Krevnar watched with intense focus, his ancient eyes missing nothing. Amelia smiled slightly. Thank you, Instructor. That's very generous. Velnaran's posture relaxed slightly, expecting a hesitant attack from his clearly outmatched opponent. That small change in his stance was all Amelia needed to see. Begin, called the Admiral. Amelia didn't move. Not yet. She had 9 seconds to show the entire Galactic Confederation what a human from Earth was truly capable of. And she intended to use every one of them perfectly. That was all Amelia needed to change everything. 9 seconds to prove what humans could do. 9 seconds to rewrite her future at the Academy. Second one. Amelia remained completely still, her eyes fixed on Velnaran. The instructor's posture showed his confidence bordering on arrogance. He expected her to rush forward in a clumsy attack. Instead, she breathed calmly, observing the subtle shifts in his stance. Her stillness confused him, causing him to slightly lower his guard. Second two. With explosive speed that shocked everyone watching, Amelia dropped to the floor and executed a perfect forward roll. The move was so fast that Velnaran barely had time to register it. The lower gravity of the training hall, combined with the higher oxygen content in the air, made her faster and more agile than any human had a right to be. She rolled directly under his secondary defensive limbs, entering the space he thought was protected. Second 3. Before Velnaran could react, Amelia had already identified her target, the neural cluster at the base of his thoracic segment. This vulnerable point in Teresian physiology was something few non-Teresians even knew existed. Amelia had spotted it during her careful observations of the instructor over the past weeks. She struck with precise force, not enough to cause damage, but sufficient to send a shock through his nervous system. The students watching gasped. Admiral Krevnar's compound eyes widened in surprise. No one had expected the human to land a strike at all, let alone target a physiological weakness with such accuracy. Second 4. As the instructor's secondary, limbs instinctively contracted from the neural shock, Amelia was already moving again. She slid sideways and then behind him with fluid motion. Velnaran tried to turn, but his body was still responding to the unexpected strike. Second 5. Positioned behind the instructor, Amelia delivered 3 precisely calculated strikes to pressure points along his spinal ridge. Each strike was perfectly timed and placed, temporarily disrupting the neural signals to his primary, combat limbs. Again, she used only enough force to create the effect without causing injury. This was a demonstration, not a battle, and she knew the difference. Commander Zorthak stepped forward as if to intervene, but Admiral Krevnar raised a limb to stop him. The Admiral was watching with complete focus, his ancient eyes missing nothing of this unexpected display. Second 6. With his limbs momentarily unresponsive, Velnaran attempted to turn and face his surprisingly dangerous opponent. But Amelia had anticipated this reaction. She was no longer where he expected her to be. The instructor's movements were becoming less coordinated as his nervous system struggled to recover from the precise strikes. Second 7. Amelia appeared, at his side, using his own turning momentum against him. With perfect timing, she swept his now unbalanced legs with a low kick that took advantage of the lighter gravity. On Earth, such a move against an opponent of his size would have been difficult. Here, physics was on her side. The watching students were completely silent now. Even those who had laughed at her selection were staring in disbelief. Kyle Bennett, watching from the back of the room, allowed himself a small smile. Second 8. As the massive instructor began to fall, Amelia moved with Deathworld-honed reflexes to position herself perfectly. She controlled his descent with careful pressure at key points, ensuring he would land in a way that gave her maximum advantage. Second 9. Velnaran crashed to the ground with Amelia guiding his fall. As he landed, she established perfect leverage over his primary nerve bundle. With minimal pressure, she could now cause maximum immobilization. The position was something she had learned on Earth, but adapted for Teresian physiology based on her studies. The instructor could not move. He could barely speak. His 6 eyes blinked rapidly in confusion and shock. The entire hall was absolutely silent. Admiral Krevnar's compound eyes had widened to their fullest extent. Commander Zorthak's stood frozen, in disbelief. Every student was perfectly still, trying to process what they had just witnessed. 9 seconds. That was all it had taken for a human female from a Class 12 Deathworld to take down one of the Academy's most respected combat instructors. "Do you concede?" Amelia asked quietly, maintaining the pressure point hold. Velnaran tried to move, testing her control. Finding himself truly immobilized, he responded, "I concede." Amelia immediately released the pressure point and stepped back. She offered a hand to help the instructor up, a human gesture of respect that only added to the surreality of the moment. After a brief hesitation, Velnaran accepted the assistance, rising to his feet with as much dignity as he could manage. Admiral Krevnar stepped forward into the circle. "Remarkable," he said, his translator conveying genuine interest. "In my 200 years of combat experience, I have rarely seen such an efficient demonstration." Amelia bowed slightly to the Admiral. "Thank you, sir." "How did you know those Teresian pressure points?" Velnaran asked, his voice a mixture of shock and professional curiosity. "That information is not in any public database. I didn't know them specifically, Amelia replied honestly. But all vertebrate species have neural clusters that follow evolutionary patterns. The specifics differ, but the principles are universal. I observed how you moved during our classes and identified likely vulnerabilities based on comparative xenobiology. The Admiral's neck crests fluttered in what Amelia recognized as impressed surprise. You determined his physiological weaknesses through observation alone? Yes, Admiral. On Earth we have a saying, knowledge is power. Understanding your opponent is the first step to victory. Commander Zorthax approached, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by cautious respect. The demonstration is complete. Students, return to your regular training schedule. But no one moved. The implication of what they had just witnessed was still sinking in. A human, a species they had all dismissed as weak and fragile, had just defeated a combat instructor in 9 seconds. Admiral Krevnar turned to address the gathered students. What you have witnessed today is a valuable lesson. Never judge combat potential by size or appearance alone. Evolution takes many paths, and a Class 12 Deathworld clearly produces adaptations we must study further. He turned back to Amelia. Human Amelia Carter, report to my temporary quarters at the end of your training day. I have questions about Earth combat techniques. Yes, Admiral, Amelia replied. As the crowd finally began to disperse, filled with excited whispers and new respect, Kyle Bennett approached her. That was something else, he said quietly. You just changed everything for humans in the Confederation. Amelia nodded. That was the plan. Velnaran, still adjusting his stance to recover from the encounter, looked at Amelia with new eyes. It seems we have severely misjudged humans, he said. Or at least you. Not just me, Amelia replied. All of us. Humans don't look impressive by Confederation standards. We don't have extra limbs or natural armor or specialized senses. But we evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day, in 1,000 different ways. That experience shaped us in ways you're only beginning to understand. The instructor considered this. Tomorrow's class will be different, he said finally. Amelia smiled. I'm looking forward to it. Word of what happened in the training hall spread through the academy faster than light communication. By evening, every student and instructor had seen the recording. 9 seconds. A human female from a Class 12 Deathworld had defeated a combat instructor in 9 seconds. Amelia walked through the corridors and felt the change immediately. Students who had previously ignored her now moved aside respectfully. Some nodded in greeting. Others watched her with new curiosity. The dismissive looks and mocking gestures were gone, replaced by careful observation and whispered conversations that stopped when she approached. After her last class, Amelia reported to Admiral Krevnar's temporary quarters as instructed. The door slid open as she approached, recognizing her biometric signature. The Admiral was standing by a large viewport, looking out at the orange sky of Nexus Station. Without turning, he spoke. Enter, Deathworlder Carter. Amelia stepped inside, noting the slight shift in her title. No longer just human, but Deathworlder, a term that carried new respect after her demonstration. You wish to see me, Admiral, she said, standing at attention. Krevnar turned to face her. His ancient eyes studied her with scientific interest, rather than the dismissal she had grown accustomed to from other Confederation officers. How did you really know those Teresian pressure points, he asked without preamble. That information is not in any public database. I told the truth, Admiral, Amelia replied honestly. I didn't know them specifically, but all vertebrate species have neural clusters that follow evolutionary patterns. The specifics differ, but the principles are universal. I observed how Velnaran moved during our classes and identified likely vulnerabilities. No one has ever neutralized a Teresian combat master so efficiently, the Admiral stated, especially not on first attempt. On Earth, we have a concept called comparative anatomy, Amelia explained. All species evolve according to certain patterns. Once you understand those patterns, You can identify structural vulnerabilities, even in unfamiliar life forms. The Admiral was silent for a long moment. "We have severely misjudged humans," he finally said. "Or at least you." "May I speak freely, Admiral?" "Proceed." "You've misjudged all humans," Amelia said carefully. "Not just me. Our world shaped us differently than most species in the Confederation. We don't have natural armor or multiple limbs or specialized sensory organs, but we adapted to survive in changing environments against constant threats. We learned to observe, analyze, and exploit weaknesses quickly. It's not just physical capabilities, it's how we think." The Admiral's neck crests fluttered in what Amelia now recognized as thoughtful consideration. "Your assessment has merit. The Confederation has categorized humans based on physical parameters alone, without accounting for cognitive and adaptive differences." He moved to a control panel and activated a display. "Your file has been updated. Effective immediately, you will join the Advanced Combat Training Unit. Your insights on Deathworld combat tactics may prove valuable to Confederation security forces." "Thank you, Admiral. One more question, Deathworlder Carter. You could have demonstrated your abilities at any time. Why wait until now?" Amelia smiled slightly. "Strategic advantage, Admiral. By allowing others to underestimate me, I gained time to study them without being perceived as a threat. I learned more in 3 weeks of being dismissed than I would have in months of being watched carefully." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "A psychological tactic?" "Yes, sir. On Earth, we call it playing the long game." "Interesting." The Admiral made a note on his datapad. "You are dismissed, Deathworlder Carter. I will be watching your progress with interest." The next morning, Amelia arrived at the training hall to find Commander Zorthax waiting for her. "Deathworlder Carter," he said, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by formal respect. "Your training assignment has been modified." "I was informed, Commander." "What you may not have been informed of is that I personally requested to oversee your advanced combat integration." His 4 eyes met hers directly. "I made an error in my assessment of your capabilities. I intend to correct that error." Amelia was surprised. Such an admission from a Draxian commander was rare. "Thank you, Commander." Zorthax led her to a new section of the training facility, where the elite students practiced. Faces turned as she entered, some surprised, others appraising, none dismissive. "Attention," the commander announced. "Deathworlder Carter will be joining the advanced unit, effective immediately. Her insights on Deathworld combat tactics will be incorporated into our training regimen." From the back of the group, Zontar, the axolotl student who had previously mocked her, clicked his mandibles in surprise. "Commander, with respect, is this because of one demonstration? Perhaps it was simply a case of Instructor Velnaran underestimating his opponent." "A valid question," Commander Zorthax acknowledged. "Instructor Velnaran, please address this concern." Velnaran stepped forward from the side of the room. Despite the events of the previous day, Amelia was surprised to see the Teresian instructor appeared neither angry nor embarrassed. "The greatest error in combat is underestimating your opponent," Velnaran began, looking at each student in turn. "I made that error. I saw a small human female and assumed weakness. I failed to consider that a species evolving on a Class 12 death world would develop extraordinary adaptations." He turned to Amelia. "Deathworlder Carter will now be co-instructing this module on adaptive combat techniques." The room fell silent. Co-instructing was an honor typically reserved for visiting combat masters, not students. "I have already reviewed the recording of yesterday's demonstration with the Advanced Tactical Analysis Team," Velnaran continued. "The technique used by Deathworlder Carter identified and exploited vulnerabilities in Teresian physiology that our own medical experts believed were unknown outside our species. This demonstrates a level of observational and analytical skill that warrants further study." Amelia stepped forward, feeling the weight of every eye in the room on her. "Thank you, Instructor. I look forward to sharing what I know and to learning from all of you as well." In the following days, everything changed. Amelia was moved to new quarters in the advanced student section. Her access to training facilities was upgraded. Most importantly, people listened when she spoke. During tactical simulations, her suggestions were now considered seriously. During physical training, other students asked to be paired with her to learn her techniques. During meal times, she was invited to join groups of elite students rather than eating alone. 1 week after the demonstration, Kyle Bennett joined her for lunch. "You're the talk of the station," he said. "Not just the academy, but the entire diplomatic corps. The Arxian ambassador asked me yesterday if all humans can do what you did." "What did you tell him?" Amelia asked. "I said we're all different, but that underestimating any human is generally a bad idea." Kyle grinned. "I've been getting a lot more respect in my security classes since your little demonstration." "That was part of the plan," Amelia admitted. "Not just for me, but for all humans in the Confederation." As they finished eating, Amelia was approached by a group of first-year students who had just arrived at the academy. Among them was another, human, a young man who looked both nervous and hopeful. "Deathworlder, Carter," one of the alien students said respectfully. "This is John Reeves from Earth. We thought he might benefit from your guidance." Amelia stood and extended her hand to the new human student. "Welcome to the academy," she said. "Things are a little different for humans here now." As John shook her hand, Amelia saw in his eyes the same determination that had driven her. More humans would follow, and none of them would ever be overlooked again.